Hello, everybody. How are you? Let's get Instagram started as well. It is Thursday Tea Time Live, or I'm going to call it Tea Time History Chat Live because I'll be moving it soon. So I'll let you know. Streaming live on YouTube and Facebook, which is the first time, and you may also be listening back to this on the podcast. So welcome wherever you're joining from. Instagram seems to be taking a little while to get going this morning or this afternoon. So I hope you've got a drink with you. We've got a lot of history to cover. We're carrying on with the 2022 review of places I've been. I think I got to 51. I can add to another one to that today, 52, because I was out and about yesterday. And yeah, so going through those where I've been, how many the historians that I've interviewed this year. I thought we'd talk about that. I've been recently so I'm going to talk about where I went yesterday, but also anyone who gets my Substack will know that I was at, let me just try this again on Instagram, excuse me, that I was at Salisbury Cathedral the other day as well. Let me just get this on. I'm so sorry. This is taking a time today. Am I on? Possibly not. Right. So I also have a tour update, really, really exciting tour update to give you. And we're live on Instagram as well. So sorry, everyone who's also on YouTube and Facebook. Bear with me a second. Hello, everyone on Instagram. For some reason, it wouldn't connect me. Today, we're talking more about the places that I've been. I think last week I told you there was 51. I've added to that this week. It's 52. We did maybe about 8 or 9 last week, so probably going to have to run through them a little bit quicker than I did last week, but it's part of the review of 2022, and I think you enjoyed it last week, especially when I sort of went off on a bit of a tangent about Runnymede, wasn't it, and Magna Carta last week. So we'll do that. I also wanted to remind you of the interviews that I've done this year that mean that you can go back and have a look. And I have I've been to 2 places in the last week, so I will talk about those as well. I have a tour update, which I think you'll find very exciting and interesting, even if you don't find it exciting. I'll talk a little bit about History After Dark last night that we did with Gareth Russell. I know many of you joined us, so thank you for that. I can see everyone joining over on YouTube. So if you're watching on I'm also streaming on Facebook Live now as well. If you're watching on Facebook, just to let you know, I don't see any live comments on the Facebook stream. It looks like I only get the YouTube comments, I think, unless you're on Facebook, in which case make a comment and then I can see if it comes up. I'm wondering if this software is incredibly clever and shows me where people are commenting from. We shall see. Hopefully someone will try that. If you're watching live, that is. If you're watching on the playback, also welcome. And if you're listening on the podcast. So we've got a tour update. I'm going to talk about a little reminder about, thank you, Chrissy. Thank you. You reminded me. Chrissy has just bought me a badge. If you want to support me in this sort of free stuff, it does genuinely help me keep going. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/Philippa. Got in there quick, didn't I? To do that, or you can, if you're watching on Instagram, you can buy me a badge. If you're watching on YouTube, you can buy me a super chat. Anything like that is well appreciated. Lisa, I haven't got 3 cameras. I've still got 2. I have still got 2 though. This is why if you're watching on Instagram, I sometimes flick over there, and if you're watching on YouTube, I sometimes flick over there. It's because I'm streaming to both at the same time. RMS Smith is on Facebook. Oh, do you want to have a little experiment for me and just say hi in the comments and see if it comes up on my on my comment thing? I think it might do with a little badge. Oh, how very exciting. Shall we get going? Oh, and I've also got news of a new summit for you, a new history online festival. We're packing it in today. Right, let's do it. So what should we start with? Oh, and I also have a Marcus Aurelius quote for you to finish off. So stay till the end for that. First of all, have you got a cup of tea? I have. I need it. Oh, maybe not. That's Earl Grey. It's been squeezed way too much. Right. That's not going to happen. Okay. Right. So last week I covered Wells Cathedral, Glastonbury Abbey, Chartwell, Windsor Castle, Runnymede, and Deerhurst, which was Oda's Chapel, and St Mary's, which used to be an abbey. So clearly, we're not going to do them in any huge detail, but let's go. Let's see. So we actually are getting to the point now where I'd started tours in the year. So all of these, for anyone who's just joining me, I wrote a list this year. Every time I visited somewhere historical, clearly, I wrote it down in the back of my diary. If it was a brand new place to me, I put a little dot next to it. So I ended up with now 52 places, 20 of which were brand new. Yes, that's right. Some of them aren't brand new because I take tour groups there. So we're starting to get into the part of the year where I was taking tour groups out. So we have Tower of London and the Scaffold. So clear. I mean, the Tower of London, you can go as many times you like in your life. I don't think you would ever bore of it. I think it's just somewhere where you can see more. And actually, when you've been and you've seen the bits that you're supposed to see, if you know what I mean. So you go and see the crown jewels, you go into the White Tower, you go, you know, to all the parts of it. You can start to sort of sit back a bit, relax a bit, and take in bits that maybe you haven't done before. And I've spoken about some of my favorite artifacts. There is one place I think that people can miss in the tower. I don't know why it's missed, and if you didn't miss it, you'll be like, no one misses that. It's the medieval part in the curtain wall, so the medieval palace that's set up there when it was Henry III's time, and that's fascinating. That's going, but they have a little exhibit at the end of that where you carry on around the curtain wall. Actually, they have a little exhibit with artifacts in, and one of those artifacts is one of my favorite ever, and it is a soldier. It's a tin soldier on horseback, and it's sort of half depleted now, with don't know, it was found in the ground, so it sort of started to disintegrate, and it just reminds you that the tower has been a place, a home to many people, still is, and children have lived there throughout the centuries. So that's one of my favorite ever artifacts. Anyway, that's at the Tower of London. We also went up to the Scaffold site. So when I take tours to the Tower of London, the tour that we take to the Tower of London is the Anne Boleyn tour, which happens every May. Now, of course, when we actually go to the Tower of London on the 19th of May, which is the anniversary of Anne Boleyn's execution, and we go up to the Scaffold site. Now, Anne Boleyn was executed within the confines of the Tower of London. The 5 men accused with her and executed with her, along, you know, inside the same time, the same case, if you like, accusations, were executed on Tower Hill on the Scaffold site. And it's a curious site because it's now been made into a memorial garden with plaques around the side, with a list of people executed. It's not a complete list by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't include the men who were executed in May 1536. But we go up to the to the Scaffold site as part of our trip to the tower, because again, it's somewhere that people can miss if they're going to the tower. So we include that, which is really cool. A new place I went to Fulham Palace. Chris, didn't they get the wrong spot? I don't know if they got the wrong. I mean, it's there or thereabouts if it's not exact. I mean, I presume it's not exact because it's a certain shape and size, which isn't big enough. I would say, without having any particular knowledge on the subject. Chrissy, why they're not listed? I don't know. I haven't found a satisfactory answer to that. I can't even remember some of the suggestions. I was about to say someone suggested that there was some bias in the list as to who had made it on and who hadn't. But I can't remember what they thought the bias was. So just to make you aware, if you go and you see the list, that it's not complete. There's still quite a few people on there. So yeah, Fulham Palace was the home of the bishops of London, and it has each one had rebuilt over the centuries. So there is a similar footprint, but not necessarily the same interiors, even if perhaps the structure of the building is there or thereabouts. But you had people being tortured there in the reign of Mary I under the Bishop of London. So it's it's really pretty gardens as well. So Fulham Palace, I did a few reels on Fulham Palace. It's a little bit out of the way for people visiting London, but if you've got a particular interest in, literally being in the spaces, then go. It's got pretty much the original courtyard, though. The courtyard looks very similar to as it would have done in Tudor times. So yeah, so that's worth going. I went to Worcester Museum. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, I was on jury service, and then they didn't want me that day, so I went next door to. I was next door to Worcester Museum, so I went in, and I'm trying to think what was there. There was something that was of interest there, and I can't think what it is. Sorry, but what I would say, and I've said this before about little provincial, would that be the right word? Museums, go and have a look, because you will find things in there that are significant but less well known. Just because they're in a little museum as opposed to a big museum in London doesn't mean you won't find anything interesting. For instance, in Stroud Museum, which is called the Garden Museum, I think, it's in Stroud. They have the mace that was handed to Henry VIII during his progress to Gloucester. I think it's the Gloucester. No, it might be the Berkeley Mace. Sorry, the Berkeley Mace, I think. Given to Henry, and it's sort of a ceremony. Oh, the king's here, and of course we're only looking after the town for the king, so we give him the mace, and he says, "Thank you very much. Here, have it back. I'm handing back. Please go about your duties, whatever." And that's in this little museum in the middle of a park in Stroud. So definitely check out provincial museums. Brockhampton Estate is a good Tudor place if you would like to go and see somewhere that I know it's off the beaten track, and it really is. I will warn anyone, you have to drive there, but when you get there, the road down to it is a private sort of driveway that goes through loads of sheep fields first. So you feel like, can it really be down here? Is this really somewhere I should be? I don't know if I should be here. It feels a bit weird. And anyway, you get to the bottom, and actually much of the house predates the Tudors, but in Tudor times, there's a couple of things, there's quite a few bits of architectural things that became fashionable. One was, as I understand it, close timbers. So instead of having wider timbers and bigger panels of wattle and daub, you got more timbers. It's a show of wealth. You can afford more timbers. The other thing there was gatehouses. So this house at Brockhampton is moated. If any of you saw my reel from there, I showed there were some ducklings there at the time in the moat. And the gatehouse that was built also as a show of wealth, also, of course, as a gatehouse, but also possibly as a secret, clandestine chapel, Catholic chapel, perhaps. But it is modelled on the house itself. So it's like a mini house. The gatehouse is like a mini house. It's 2 stories. and done in exactly the same style as the house, the Brockhampton house. That was really cute. Of course, we went to Hampton Court Palace. What can I say about Hampton Court Palace? Oh, so this May, we were there again. This is part of the Anne Boleyn tour in May, and we were shown around by the brilliant Sarah Slater. Oh, I should give a shout out to William Mitchell, who showed us around the Tower of London. He is going to be on future tours as well. He was incredible, as will Sarah Slater be. And she showed us around Hampton Court and got us into the room that Jane Seymour gave birth and subsequently died in a few days later. It's not on the visitor route, so you can't go. You can't usually go there unless you're with a group or by special access. So it's Georgianified. So it's very plain. It's now used as a training room, I think. Yeah, well, training room stroke office, but I think mainly training room. And the fireplace is still there. So you can, the room isn't the same, but the view out, or the windows and the fireplace will be the same as when Jane Seymour was in there. And to get to it, you also go past the doorway into what would have been the Queen's apartments. So that was all very exciting. So that was very new at Hampton Court. Again, if you've been following me all year, you will see the outside wall that was now inside. So there is the Chapel Royal at Hampton Court Palace, and above the altar, it's now dark wood, and there's no windows. Basically, that would have been an outside wall in Tudor times. So in the time of Wolsey, in the time of Henry VIII, it would have been an outside wall with big windows, and you can't tell that from the inside at all. But if you go into the William and Mary part of the palace and you take a left, so you go in straight away, take a left, there is a lift shaft there actually for accessibility, and if you stand there you can see the outside, what would have been the outside wall of the chapel. I've shared it on Instagram and probably Facebook, so you may have seen it. So that was special as well. So there you go. I'll tell you two things about Hampton Court that are a bit new, perhaps. The other place was and what time are we on? I'll keep going until maybe I've done 20 minutes. So Hever Castle. Hever Castle we stay on our tours. I always try and get it in for at least one night because it's so magical. And it is the childhood home, if anyone doesn't know, of Anne Boleyn. So of course, on our Anne Boleyn tours, it's definitely in there. In fact, the May tour, we stay exclusively for the entire time at Hever Castle. And when we stay, we get exclusive access. I think that's why exclusively came into my head. So Hever Castle is it was saved by the Astor family in the early 20th century. Excuse me, my voice is going. In the early 20th century, it needed a lot of money spending on it, and he obliged. The Astors obliged, and one of the things they did was add a mock Tudor village at the back, and it acted as sort of catering and extra bedrooms. And indeed, if any of you have read Gareth Russell's new book, Do Let's Have Another Drink, his biography of the Queen Mother, which I'll come back to again in a bit because he came and spoke on History After Dark with us at History After Dark last night about the book. But if any of you have read that, you'll know that there's when Bertie, who became George VI, was courting or trying to court Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, who of course became Queen Elizabeth and eventually the Queen Mother, one of his mother, Queen Mary, was very positive about this match. She'd met Elizabeth. She thought she would be extremely good for Bertie, and tried to do everything to encourage it, including like planting particular guests wherever Elizabeth would be to try and favourably sway Elizabeth's opinion of marrying Bertie, who would become George VI. Not that they knew that at the time, of course. And one of these parties where this happened was at Hever Castle. So the Queen Mother, the late Queen Mother, stayed at Hever Castle when she was Elizabeth Boleyn. She may have gone back again after that, but she definitely was there while she was Elizabeth Boleyn. So that means one of us is staying in the same room as Elizabeth as Queen Elizabeth when we're there. Who knows which one it is? I don't know if Gareth ever found out. I'll have to ask him. And of course, the castle itself, and the castle's got a much longer history than just Anne Boleyn and the Boleyn family. But so we do a hidden Hever tour as well, if we can fit it in, so that you can actually get into the castle-y bits. You can get into where Astor sort of had his private office is more into the it's sort of more private but less salubrious. And so you actually get in to these spaces and really appreciate that it is a very old building that the Astors were then able to modernize some way. So I think my sister's just turned up. I don't think she knows I do this live. Anyway, so we get to do all that. So you get, but if you ever get a chance to go to Hever, then I haven't even spoken about the gardens, the hand dug, incredibly huge lake that's there. 2 moats. It has 2 moats, and lots of wildlife, birds there as a result. So very, very cool place to go. Also went to Hereford Cathedral. Now this is somewhere I had been quite a few years ago, and after this I will move on to some of the other things I wanted to talk about. But Hereford Cathedral is a little bit off the beaten track, I think, for most people if you're visiting England, but that is where the Mappa Mundi is stored, is displayed. Now, do you all, I don't know, thumbs up, thumbs down, whether you know what the Mappa Mundi is? I can see people joining as well. Hi, Philip. Hi, Katrina, Josephina. Hi, everybody. I can see you joining. Hi. So the Mappa Mundi is it's not only displayed at Hereford Cathedral. Oh, Philip's favourite aunt lives at you can lives near Hereford Cathedral and Mayfair Forest, which we could hear your dog's tappity tap paws. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's somebody here. Gets very excited. Right, so let me tell you about the Mappa Mundi from the top of my head. So please feel free to go and fill in the blanks. So the Mappa Mundi is a medieval map, sort of in inverted commas, of what the monks who were at Hereford believed the world to look like. Now, I say inverted commas because it also includes going up to heaven, going to hell. Jerusalem, of course, is in the middle. So if you look at a map now, I think by convention, every country, the maps that are produced in your country will have your country in the center. So this has Jerusalem in the middle, in the center, should I say. But it also has it cites all sorts of places, Babylon, but it also has England. But England is England and all, well, the landmass that is Great Britain now is all sort of squished in the bottom left-hand corner. It's circular as well, by the way. It's on vellum, so it's on calfskin. So it also undulates. It's got nothing to do with it trying to show mountains or anything like that, but it's all this sort of, because of the way it's dried out. And what they've done is create a replica as well that you can get your hands on and actually see up close. But there are incredible I should share this again. I should share this again. But I say this about all the places, don't I? Maybe I should just, excuse me, maybe I should just do that. Just share everything again. There are depictions of, I don't know whether they had completely made them up or they had heard about creatures in other places, but there are all these like bizarre creatures on there. But the lady who was showing it to me pointed out this. This is the one I think I need to share. There is a man who looks like he's on skis wearing a bobble hat. And this is made in Philip, yes, vellum. So calf skin, yeah. I can't think of the year. Someone Google it for me and pop it in the chat. And the original casing, which was found in a skip, I think, or industrial bin, is also there. It's not displayed in its original casing. It's opposite its original casing now. And in its original casing, which is made of wood, it's a wooden frame, it looks like it was actually drawn in, well, it was in situ in the casing. And the reason they say that is because the compass point in the center goes through. So there's a hole in the casing as well as in the vellum. So it's a fascinating thing. It's like the oldest, I think, medieval map in the world. So it's incredibly significant. And you go through actually from where the Mappa Mundi is stored into the chained library, which is a really amazing example of a chained library. Mouse Wonders, thank you for joining me. I'll see you later. The chained library, so it's literally, as it says on the tin, it's a library and all the books are chained. And there's some really interesting features of it. Not just the chains the chains are long enough to take the book off the shelf and read it in the reading desks underneath. But all the spines are turned backwards. So the spines, hi Marie, the spines are turned inside. So you just have the pages showing. And so people have occasionally written on the pages to show what the book is. So that's okay. There's some people having to leave. That's absolutely fine. I'll see you next week. And the reason for that is that taking the books on and off the shelves was damaging the spines. So they worked out that wasn't a great idea. So they changed it. So there you go. So those are some more places that I've been to in 2022, and I don't even think we're that far down. I have 3 lists. Just quickly show you. It's here. I have 3 columns, and we're just about down on the first one. Westminster Abbey came next. Westminster Abbey and Westminster Hall I visited. Laybatzes, anything about Victorian ages? Well, hang on a little bit longer and I will tell you about my visit to Victoria Blist's Hill in a little while. So Westminster, when I went, so I spoke about going to the gallery, the Jubilee Gallery above. You have to pay slightly more to go in. And I've mentioned it because that's where the effigies are, one of which is Mary I. And so, fantastic. Mayfair Forest Witch, Mappa Mundi, one of the world's most unique treasures, constructed on a single sheet of vellum. Yeah. So actually, sorry, back to wonderful. So scholars believe it was made around 1300. Thank you very much, Mayfair Forest Witch. Another thing to say, sorry, just to skip back to the Mappa Mundi, is there's evidence that the calf was actually bred for this job, for the job that its skin would be used for the Mappa Mundi. So anyway, there you go. There's another thing. The effigy of Mary I in the Jubilee Galleries at Westminster Abbey and so many of you would have heard me speak about this before, but it shocked me because she has what ostensibly looked like a pregnant belly. And of course, we know the stories that she died of complications, perhaps womb cancer, something that had led her to believe she could be pregnant. But then clearly, it was actually the whatever it was that was going to kill her. And you see this pregnant belly, looking pregnant belly, in her wooden effigy, which is woo. You also get a view down onto the Cosmati pavement. The Cosmati pavement is where you will see, I mean, it's going to feature prominently on the 6th of May for the coronation of Charles III. It was created for Henry III, and it's called the Cosmati pavement. It's named after the family who created this technique. It's an Italian technique, but it's quite exquisite in Westminster Abbey. I think it's usually more. I don't think it's usually as colourful, I think. So anyway, so when you're in the Jubilee Galleries, you get a view down. You're not supposed to take photos though. You're not supposed to take photos when you're in the Jubilee Gallery, which is a bit of a pain. You also get a close-up of the coronation chair. There's a second one made when William and Mary were both crowned at the same time. So that's there. And of course, you'll see the coronation chair. Presumably that will, I don't know what they'll do with that. The stone of Scone, of course, will have to come back down, which will be interesting. Returned by the Queen in 2000 and... Nope, don't know. Don't want to guess. Went back up to Scotland. So that will be brought back down and put into its special slot in the coronation chair. Actually, I will talk about one more place because Westminster Abbey, Westminster Hall. So I visited there. Westminster Hall is the only, it's not quite the only remaining part of the Palace of Westminster, as was, which had a massive fire during Henry VIII's reign and a devastating fire under in the reign of Queen Victoria, which required it to be rebuilt. So when it had the fire in the reign of Henry VIII, it was uninhabitable and remained uninhabited ever since, except that Parliament would still make use of it. They made use of St Stephen's Chapel. Now, when the House of Parliament burnt down in like I say, in the reign of Victoria, I want to say, no, I'm not going to guess. They rebuilt. They rebuilt the chamber for Parliament with the stalls facing each other, which was how St Stephen's Chapel, where they had met beforehand, before the fire, that was how that was set out. So this is why the Houses of Parliament, the British Houses of Parliament in London, are facing each other. It's based on the Chapel of St Stephen's, which came before. Marie, is there no allowances for me taking photographs because of being a guide? Sometimes I go places. A lot of times, actually, I go places and I don't tell them who I am. Not for any particular reason other than I suppose I just think I'll have a day out. Or I don't know. Or maybe I just don't want to seem like a big head. I don't know. I should really, shouldn't I? I should. I actually got told off because when I say you're not supposed to take photos, I mean you're not supposed to take photos. More for my reference. I wouldn't share them because I can't, but there you go. I was at a fantastic online talk by Jonathan Foyle on Sunday night about Westminster Hall, about the Palace of Westminster, excuse me. And he gave another list of books. I give you a list of books, right? And then I went to another talk and I've got more books, but it's specifically about Westminster and the theory that actually where the Lady Chapel is now, so Westminster Abbey, that's where you have the incredible Henry VII Chapel that was created as the Tudor family mausoleum. Cromwell was also buried in there at one point. You can see bomb damage from the bomb that hit just outside in World War II, just as a by the by. But you've got that's that fantastic fan vaulted firework like ceiling. Now where that is, there was a previous Lady Chapel, but the conjecture is from this talk that that Jonathan was giving the other day, is that actually that didn't exist prior to that first Lady Chapel being built. So not originally, basically, to the Henry III Westminster Abbey. And that actually you would have left, if you're the king, left the Abbey and gone straight over into through a walled gate, a gate in a wall. Yeah, precinct wall, precinct gate, whatever. Anyway, through there to the entrance, to the main entrance into Westminster, the Palace of Westminster. Now, you can't kind of you can't join it up because the palace, of course, is completely rebuilt. By the way, in the style of the Henry VII Chapel, to mirror it. I don't know if you ever noticed that it's of a similar style. That was on purpose. That was the winning, because people could put in their designs, and that was the winning design. But you can still go into the House of Parliament, into the Great Hall, which is the original Great Hall, and so built for William II. I think it was built in William II's reign, and then the roof, that magnificent roof, was put on during the reign of Richard II. It's held the trials of Charles I, the gunpowder plotters before that, the men, other than George Boleyn, the men who were caught up in the downfall of Anne Boleyn, they were tried in Westminster Hall. You've had just the list of things that have happened in that hall go on and on. Coronation banquets. Elizabeth I would have had a coronation banquet in there, etc., etc., etc. So it's well worth going in there. Marie, I don't think it's entitled or taken advantage. It just makes sense. And I saw you skirt over the historian part, madam. So I know, maybe I need to, be a little bit, yeah. Well, okay, cool. So let me share with you some more historians that I've sat down with this year. So if you've missed any of these that I'm about to tell you about, they are on my YouTube. What I still need to do is upload them to the new podcast. So any of you who are following my old podcast, thank you very much. You'll notice it finishes at a certain point. If you follow my Substack, which you can get to on through the link in my bio, then and I thought I had it on YouTube. I haven't, but if you find my Substack, then the podcast is there, but it also goes on to Apple, and it's just called the British History Podcast. My Substack is philippa.substack.com. Colleen, bummed you missed Had yesterday. Right, well, let me tell you about Had in a short moment. And of course, you can go back and see all the History After Dark things, shows, episodes on Instagram. And now we are History After Dark also on YouTube. It looks, when you go to our History After Dark YouTube channel, it looks like we haven't got anything on there. And that's because it automatically goes to the videos tab, not the live tab. And our shows are all recorded live and streamed straight onto YouTube. So that's why that looks like there's nothing on there. We are there. Just click the live tab and it will come up with them. So Gareth for the win. Gareth for the win. So Gareth was with us on History After Dark, and there are on yes, on my YouTube channel, there are 2 interviews with Gareth, actually. One is about the Titanic. He wrote a brilliant book about Titanic, which I've mentioned, Titanic, the Ship of Dreams. And when I interviewed him, I wanted to understand why Titanic had captured our imaginations so much. Because it's by no means the only disaster, and it was not the largest either. So, Brian, yes, it's very cold. -5 on the car this morning when I took the kids to school. So sat there for 10 minutes waiting so I could actually see through the windscreen. So yeah, so that is definitely one to catch. I interviewed Owen. He talked about the 2 Annes of Hever Castle. I've spoke about Hever Castle a little bit earlier on, of course, with the link to Anne Boleyn, but there's also, of course, Anne of Cleves, and her history there is becoming more known about. And Owen is particularly passionate about bringing the history of Anne of Cleves out. So that interview is on as well. That's as a podcast. I spoke to Gareth Williams, who is a curator at the British Museum, about actually it was very interesting about hoards and why people bury things. How much is still being discovered? Like, all the time. We think one of the things that we must, I think, keep in mind all the time as historians and people interested in history, is keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. They're all stories that we think we know, but there could be new evidence at any point. So one of the things I spoke to Gareth about, excuse me for a moment, I'll take a drink. One of the things I spoke to Gareth Williams about is, and I want to do a follow-up with him, is a coin that seems to have been struck in between the death of Harold Godwinson and the coronation of William I, William the Conqueror, William the Bastard, however you want to describe him. And not only is this a different coin that was struck, it's of a woman. So, I think that's really exciting. One of the things I am passionate about is not to view history through our eyes. Now, we're very into thinking at the moment, every woman in history was a secret feminist or even an outward feminist, and things like this is us looking at it through our eyes. And I don't think that's necessary. We just need to keep an open mind, because what are you going to do if you come at it from that point of view all the time, and then evidence is presented that says, actually, do you know what? When Harold Godwinson died, in that gap between the Battle of Hastings and William I, there was a woman contender for the throne, and she had a lot of support, and she had so much support, and it looked almost so likely that how come there's a coin struck with her head with her image on it? How did that happen? You can't close yourself off from these things. Sorry, I think I've missed a couple of comments. Marie, I seem to have missed those interviews. Could be because some of them were last year. So now I do a historian interview every month. Before that, it wasn't necessarily every month. Sometimes I did a virtual tour. Sometimes it was a historian interview. Actually, do you know what it is? It's because some of these are still only in Patreon. That's what it is. Some of these are only in Patreon. So if you're in my Patreon, you get 12 months exclusive access to blogs, to images, to many of the videos, actually. So some of them are coming out now onto the to YouTube. But if you're in Patreon, which Maria, you are, you can go back and find all of these. Yeah, we all wear black. Secret Wednesday Addams fans. It's good on screen, black or white, black or sort of light cream. If I wear anything else, it goes a little bit, looks a bit weird. So other interviews you might be interested in. I also I've done 2 with Owen as well. The history of Hever. Have I released that one yet? That might be there. Arbella Stewart. with Dr. Cat Marchant, if you've not caught that one yet. Arbella Stewart is one of these characters that we should know more about. Another one that we should know more about. When I say should, I mean as in when you find out about them, you're going to be like, oh, if you don't already know about them, you're going to be really pleased when you do. And I have an interview coming out this Sunday. Members of my Patreon have had this access to this already since last Sunday, but it's my interview with Helen Carr about John of Gaunt. We are actually secretly Disney villains. Yeah, you're right. That would be, well, your pictures look, Mayfair Forest Witches, we'll share them later too if Catherine hasn't already. Really cool, really, really cool. Yeah, Helen Carr. So this Sunday, look out for that. Her interview with me about John of Gaunt. Chewing gum's late but here. So Lisa, the book about Anna by Heather Darcy was wonderful. It is a fantastic book, and I have an interview with Heather Darcy also available about Anna of Cleves. Tracy Borman I spoke to on a couple so I spoke to her about the sisters Elizabeth and Mary, but also the what she thought would happen to the monarchy. Now, bearing in mind this was recorded in the start of this year, so lots has happened clearly with the Queen dying, and with everything else sort of going on. So it's worth listening to that interview just to hear what she says. Some of the virtual tours I think I'm going to start to release. Like I say, these have been exclusive in Patreon for actually over 12 months now. So I'll see about doing that, because I've just noticed I have one on Hereford Cathedral and the Mappa Mundi. The other interview I have with Gareth Russell on YouTube and on the podcast, I'm saying on the podcast, I'm being really hesitant in case I haven't uploaded it to the podcast yet, is about the downfalls of Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, and how if we compare and contrast those, we can learn about each. It's very telling, the differences between their downfalls, what it tells us about what was said and what probably was actually meant, with the other one. That's a fascinating interview. Leander Delisle was talking to me about Henrietta Maria in another interview that was released in May. That was actually released before her book on Henrietta Maria, so that was really cool. You stick with me, people, stick with me. So yeah, Henrietta Maria, the wife of Charles I. Leander did a talk also for the Stuart Summit about Henrietta Maria. She's a fascinating character, because like she says, she has this black legend. Her name is associated with trying to, or forcibly, however, converting Charles I, who of course dies an actual Protestant martyr in his own eyes. So I don't know how they try and level against her that she converts the king somehow to Catholicism. She does not. Even if she wanted to, clearly that wasn't going to happen. So you have a figurehead for the church in England as Protestantism, and he marries a Catholic French princess, and their relationship, if you just look at it again, let's think we're looking at it through the prism of religion a lot when we're looking back to this time period, because we're told it's Protestants versus the Catholics, and actually there's examples when you start scratching the surface of, guess what, people were just friends with different opinions, like we should all be now. And I say should be because it's not happening as much as it should be, but you can have friends who have differing opinions, and that happened anyway. So you've got Charles and Henrietta Maria married happily, and Henrietta Maria of course has to deal with being the wife of a king who's in the midst of a civil war. Her Children are in danger. Her children have to escape. She has to escape. She is almost killed by the parliamentarian troops, by Cromwell's troops. They find out where she is and bomb her house. They throw they fire cannon at the house. Incredibly interesting figure. Now, if you miss the Stuart Summit, because that's one of the talks involved as well. I mean, you can watch the YouTube video. That I don't think was in there. It might be. But if you want to watch the Stuart Summit talks again, I'm going to package them up. They're going to be an add-on to the next online history festival, which you'll be able to purchase. And I'll tell you about that in a moment as well. So there's Leander's. Elizabeth Norton, who is well known for her work in the Tudor period, but actually really likes the Anglo-Saxon period as well. And you know me, I love a bit of Anglo-Saxon period. So chewing gums. I always think Charles I and II are very different. It must have been a strange time in Britain with the with the Cromwells, with Oliver, and then trying to get his son. That didn't work. In between. Oh yeah. I mean, so you've got basically the people at the top, and really they're arguing. They're the ones arguing. Everyone else, when you look back through history, and we've been through turmoil the last few years, and if you still watch the news, then you're going to feel like you're still in it. I'm starting to dispense with the need to have daily anxiety shoved down my throat. But look back through history, and you would probably say to somebody who you could then, I don't know, say they've lived through the times of Charles, Cromwell, Charles, and just say, do you know what? You're going to have to just chill. Don't get too embroiled. Don't get too worried. It's all going to keep going anyway. Concentrate on your own lives. It must have been very strange, very, very strange. And of course, they're getting into, and this still happens, they're getting into the minutiae of your daily life. Thank you for the badge, Colleen. Thank you. So anyone watching on Instagram, please, if you can, if you're willing, if you want to buy me a badge, I do believe that you get then a different coloured heart. Who doesn't want to do that? And I think your badge might change, your profile might change after a few badges. I'm not sure. But thank you, Colleen. Thank you very much. And thank you, Chrissy, earlier for buying one. The mind. So when we're talking about the religious changes, we're talking about, of course, actually sort of private prayer, private religious practices, the relationship of you and God, between you and God, and someone is telling you how you have to have that relationship, even though it's been fine to have that relationship in a different way up till right now, right? And I think the same principle can be attached to a lot of different examples, but religion is, when we're looking back, so I'm saying this because you've got Charles I, then of course you get the Puritans with Cromwell's regime in the interregnum, where they ban Christmas, they ban fairy lights, crackers, they ban the theatre the theatre shut down, etc, etc. That's really important daily life, that they want to dictate how you go about. Anyway, how do we get onto that? So another interview, Elizabeth Norton, about the Anglo-Saxon period, and specifically actually powerful women in Anglo-Saxon England, which I was very interested to find out about. Jay Britton, who is the Tudor Songbook, I have an interview with her, and she tells us all about, I wanted to know excuse me, I wanted to know about how she goes about preparing the music. How does she know she's performing the way that it would have been heard in the time of Anne Boleyn? We also talk about Anne Boleyn and Henry composing, and she got her hands on one of Anne Boleyn's actual songbooks, music books, which is quite incredible. So she talks about that. Hazel Forsyth spoke to me about the Great Fire of London. Hazel Forsyth has written a fantastic book. She's a curator at the Museum of London, and she wrote a brilliant book called Butcher Baker Candlestick Maker about the real stories of real people caught up in the Great Fire of London. And that's what I wanted to focus on in the interview. It's really fascinating to hear about how people were affected. Lots of stories that aren't usually told, so we told them. More recently, Estelle Perron, loved her, had to put an explicit warning on the YouTube video. But she's just funny. She just uses all the words. They're there to be used, and they are used occasionally. So her new book, Blood, Fire and Gold, is about Elizabeth I and Catherine de Medici, the Queen Mother of France, and it's a sort of dual biography. So she came on to the podcast and to YouTube to speak to me about that, about her book. Kate McCaffrey talked to me about the Books of Hours, Anne Boleyn's Books of Hours, and her specific work. Emma, Estelle needs to be a guest on Had. It's coming. It is coming. I actually said to Estelle, would you like to come on to History After Dark? Basically, we talk about history and we don't worry if we swear. Like, it's kind of compulsory. And she was like, I'm there. She's so fantastic. So fantastic. So yes, I have the interview with Kate McCaffrey. So Kate is the assistant curator alongside Dr. Owen Emerson at Hever Castle, and her work for her masters looked at these sort of, I'm going to say secret, but they were erased passages, written, handwritten passages that were in Anne's Book of Hours, the printed Book of Hours. Now, we went into what does printed mean, because that's not what I thought it meant. And what these inscriptions were, how she found them, what did they say, what do they tell us about the book. She also gave us a bit of an exclusive, which is semi-exclusive now, about the exhibition that Hever are going to be putting on in so from February next year. So that was the latest one. Kate was last month, I think. So Helen Carr is going live on for YouTube at non-Patreon members. Patreon, you've already got access to the interview, but that goes live on Sunday, the shorter version with adverts. If you want the longer version with no adverts, join Patreon. It's £5 a month. Some of you here, I keep knocking the microphone, excuse me. Some of you here are already on my Patreon, so I hope you're finding it enjoyable. I hope you are finding it good value for money. I'm trying to give good value for money. The blog that's going to be this month. Oh, we're on the anniversary of the birth of Mary Queen of Scots, aren't we? 8th of December. She's going to be she is the subject of this month's blog in Patreon as well. If you just want blogs, then you can also pay for my Substack, and I share the blogs there. And next month, so January, the first interview is going to be Dr. Joanne Paul. Emma says, love the extended interview versions with Patreon and the opportunity to ask questions. Good point. So yes, thank you, Emma. So if you're in Patreon, I let you know who I'm about to interview and give you a week to get in, or a little bit more if I can, to get in your questions for that person. So yeah, so Joanne had lots of questions. Joanne wrote the book The House of Dudley, about all the Dudleys, from the reign of Henry VII through to the reign of Elizabeth I. And we had honestly such a fun discussion. I cannot wait to share that with you. It was so much fun, and it went by so quickly. We could have spoken for another couple of hours. Absolutely. Emma says, I'm rubbish at coming up with good questions, but love hearing everyone else's. Well, I will try and give you more and more notice. I'm getting a list together, of people who've agreed to come onto the podcast. So I will be able to give you more and more notice of how who's coming on. I am about to so I've been in touch with um uh sorry, I've been in touch with Susie Edge, who's just written or published Mortal Monarchs. So we're hoping to get together in January. So you can ask a question about any death of any monarch, including, actually, she's got Princess Charlotte in her book as well, and there was someone else. I think she might have Arthur Tudor in the book. I can't remember. I've just bought it. Must finish Gareth's book. Must finish it. I've got something really exciting on Saturday that I'm going to break to you next week that I'm doing. So where am I? Sorry, some comments come in. Marie, oh, it's lovely. I've literally turned into the journalist that no longer wants to read, watch, or listen to the news. Yeah, my Patreon is much better company with my tea. Thank you. Well, interestingly, it's sort of how Rebecca says she's really enjoying Patreon. Thank you. It's I suppose, started or developed because yeah, we need a bit of a break from from the noise. And it's very interesting, though, isn't it? And to learn new things. I think it's fantastic. Chewing gums, did you watch Royal Mob on Sky? No, I don't even know what that is. Should I know what that is? I don't know. So there you go. I will maybe put together I'll put together a post with all of those interviews on, so you can see. I say this. I will see if I have time. Now, someone asked me earlier about anything from Victorian times yesterday, and I've shared a little bit of this today, but I'll do a bit more later. I was here. It's the Victoria Bliss. I always want to say Bliss Hill Museum in Ironbridge. It's set up as a little village. It's been built as a Victorian village, which, of course, Christmas time as well is very nice. I think when we think of a traditional Christmas, it's a lot of the Victorian decorations and elements we're thinking of, with cards and wreaths and trees and everything. Now it was an industrial site, so the foundries that were there are still there, and the village has been built up around it. Actually, the original village, which would have housed the people working there, is a little bit further away. But all of the buildings have either been moved, so they're original buildings and they've been moved brick by brick. A lot of them are that, or they're reconstructions but based on buildings which are real buildings. Inside, so I will share some more of this stuff, but inside it's all genuine, whatever it is. So the printers they have printing presses. They're printing things with in the old techniques. You can buy posters that they have printed off. So you've got Votes for Women posters up there. You got Cures for Drunkenness. There were all sorts of posters. There's a candle making place. So I've tried to capture this again. I'll share it later, where they're dipping the candles, and they explain to you how they make sure that they're the right weight. And they sold candles by weight, not by number. So they would weigh them as they were doing them, but then they would sell them by weight as well, which is quite fun. When you go to Victoria Bliss Hill, you get to change your money if you want. So you go to the bank and you change your money. I was very excited about that. I mean, bear in mind, right, this is usually somewhere people go with their children. My children are now, I don't know, actually, maybe my younger one would come with me. I think she said she would. She wished I'd asked her. I assumed she wouldn't want to go. That's bad, isn't it? And so I'm going and doing all this stuff people do with their kids on my own. There you go. Just an old sado. I also took some video of the Shire horses coming through with the trap, which was really atmospheric. So there's the little bit of Victorian stuff for you. It was, do you know, one of the things that they did a lot of, and I remember the tail end of this even from being a child, say with milk and things, is they would refill containers with milk or whatever. So, we have a real problem now with the amount of packaging we use. So, but would we be okay? I would hope we'd be okay with things like, did you know in the general store they would have a massive slab of butter which would be kept on a marble slab? So a massive pat of butter on a marble slab. So even when it's hot, the butter stayed cool. Apparently that was still the case when we had that 40-degree heat in July. The marble slab stays cool. And they would cut off a bit of butter, and then they would use the butter pats to put it into a nice little oblong and wrap it up in your greaseproof paper, presumably, and there you have your butter. So I mean, I would be up for that. Would you be up for that? I bet it would be really expensive now, though, because it would be seen as something trendy and artisan or something. But I like the idea of that. So that was another. So I think that was place number 52. I have another place I'm going on Sunday. That will be 53. And then am I done for the year? No, there's somewhere else the week after. So, but next week will be the last history chat for the year. When I come back, I'm going to be doing this on a Wednesday. Which is why I've dropped the Thursday off, Thursday tea time chat. It's just tea time history chat. That's going to be on Wednesdays from when I come back after the break. But anyway, we're not finished yet. Chewing gums, definitely recommend Victoria Bliss Till. It's to do mainly with Victoria's reign. Exactly. Yeah. Told through the eyes of one of her granddaughters. Oh, okay. I see. Sorry. Yeah. Which makes you realize how monarchies in Europe were ultimately linked. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Colleen, love the idea of a big, huge slice of butter. Jenna, I like that idea too. Butter, B-U-T-T-A. Butter. Ooh, making me hungry now. So let me tell you about an exciting announcement, actually. Oh, Richard Burton's joined. Have you got a big diamond for me? So next June, going into July, 29th of June, up till the is it the 4th of July? Yes. Is a tour. We have rejigged it. The itinerary is the same, but the emphasis is now different. We're following part of the itinerary, or the places on the itinerary of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn on their 1535 summer progress. That is going to be the backdrop to looking at the private life of Anne Boleyn. And that is going to be the name of the tour. So the tour going on June the 29th next year is the private life of Anne Boleyn, with the backdrop. Oh, he's the rag and bone man. Don't know if you can hear him. With the backdrop of the happy summer that Anne undertook progress in summer 1535. So you'll see some change in artwork and some changes on the website. The other big announcement about that tour is that Gareth Russell is my tour historian on that tour. So if you come on that tour, you will be spending the 6 days with Gareth Russell, as well as me, as well as other historians as well. I'm actually waiting to see if Tracy Borman can confirm. Jenna says, cutting the butter reminds me of the fudge counters in candy shops. Ooh, pieces are cut off a slab. Oh, and sold by weight. I need that in my life. I need that. I'm getting very hungry now. That's why. So History After Dark was with Gareth Russell last night. Any of you who've not seen Gareth or read any of his work or heard him, he has a podcast called Single Malt History that is well worth a listen to. He covers all sorts of topics. His books are incredible. I've mentioned his Titanic book. His biography of Catherine Howard, Young and Damned and Fair, is the biography of Catherine Howard. Really, really well researched and incredibly well told. So that's definitely with. And now his latest book is his latest book is Do Let's Have Another Drink. And it's the biography of the Queen of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, through 101 anecdotes. So she so he was on the podcast last night. Like I say, he's going to be on tour with me next year as well. In fact, all the tours now. He's going to be my tour historian. There's no spaces left in May, but there are spaces in the June/July Private Life of Anne Boleyn tour, and there are spaces in on the September Elizabeth I and Mary Queen of Scots tour, which Estelle Perronc is speaking on definitely. At Hever Castle, so that's exciting. Leah says, any other history podcasts I recommend? So I am a bit of a bugger for not listening to other history podcasts. I listen to a lot of Audible books, which I have another one of to recommend to you, which I'll probably end up getting in hardback. You know what I'm like. But before I tell you about it, so Gareth Russell's Single Malt History is definitely worth a listen, definitely. But Susie Edge's, oh goodness, what's it called? Look up Susie Edge on wherever you get your podcast. She is the author, as I mentioned earlier, of Mortal Monarchs. And I can't think now what her podcast is called, but when I started listening, it was really captivating, really, really interesting, and quite short. So, you can listen in sort of a quarter of an hour. You've listened to a podcast, to an episode, which is good. I know people have been asking me if I'll start doing shorter ones, which in the new year, I may well be doing a daily, only short. I'm putting it out there, but I'm not making a promise, but a short on this day in history, where I'm going to try and portray a event as if it's happening at the time, to give that sort of perspective of, these are not things that people knew the outcome of. They're real. They were real life. They're as real as stories happening to us now to the people then. So we'll see. So yeah, and a recommendation that's been made to me for another podcast, which I've not got around to listening to, is called The Rest is History. That one apparently is very, very good as well, but I've not listened to it myself. Mayfair Forest was good old times when people weren't paranoid about sharing things. When I was a kid, there was a guy in our local park who had a lemonade stand on weekends and a few of his funny looking handmade mugs. Everyone was drinking from the same cups, and there's always someone who would buy a mug from him. No one cared that a mug was just used by some stranger. Well, this is there's sort of there's caution that should be observed, and then there's paranoia, and I'm not sure where sharing a mug in a park with someone you don't know, I'm not sure where that lies. Chewing Gum says Cornwall and Devon still have amazing fudge shops. See, I only get to Somerset, don't I? I get to Somerset and the border of Devon in the summer, so I need to go further in then. I didn't finish speaking about History After Dark, did I? So History After Dark last night, we had Gareth Russell. And sorry, Marie says Dan Jones' podcast too. There's a lot of short episodes. So that's good. Good recommendation. Thank you. Gareth joined us to speak about, mainly, we were talking about his latest book, Do Let's Have Another Drink, about the Queen Mother, the late Queen Mother. But we also got questions about Catherine Howard. We also went off on a few tangents about European monarchs. It was a really good discussion. You can catch it again on history.after.dark on Instagram, History After Dark on YouTube, and also you can follow the History After Dark Substack as well, which again, I now have to find where I put that, and I will tell you. But if you do that, then you'll get a notification, and that's on as an audio file. No, it's not. It will be on as an audio file when I get that set up. It's all me at the moment with the tech. So History After Dark Hub at substack.com. So History After Dark Hub at substack.com. We called it the hub because that's where we're going to be putting news and links to what we've been doing, and potentially building that up to be to have a lot more posts in it. Oh, Rebecca, interesting. Yeah, not much difference from sharing a chalice during mass. Now, at the start of the pandemic, yeah, there was some places that, people go to mass and it was spreading a lot faster. I don't know if there's a link, but anyway, there you go. Um, Catch History After Dark with Gareth again, from last night. It was very, very enjoyable. I don't think we damaged him. I don't think he's not that delicate. So let me tell you one more thing, and then I will let you go because you've been very patient with me today. I'm already on for an hour and a quarter. But I want to let you know, many of you came to the Stuart Summit, our online history festival in the autumn, and wrote to me and said, "When's the next one? When's the next one?" So I will now tell you when the next one is. And it is going to be on the Georgians, which is actually linked as well to this. I just thought that I just said I was going to recommend to you another Audible book. It's called The Georgians, and it's by Robert Peel. Peal. Incredible stories from Georgian times. And it's really interesting. Even if you just listen to the introduction, do that about the Georgians. The way he describes them is really interesting. That they kind of didn't take life too seriously, and yeah, they didn't take life too seriously. They would gamble, they would take drugs, they would drink. The debauchery, but there was sort of um, because the previous era, the Stuart era, had been these all about religion and how they wanted you to practice your religion, and you got the point where if you were Catholic, you could not be the monarch. You couldn't take the throne in England and Scotland, and so they passed over to get to the first George. Over 50 other people in line for the British throne were passed over to get to George of Hanover. It's very but this idea that actually then when this era was one much more of, right, now's time for fun. We're not going to be too worried about that kind of thing. Yeah, Robert Peel. Yeah, I know. First, I don't know, first Conservative Prime Minister. I don't know actually, maybe, but this Robert Peel, Peal, has written a book called The Georgians, which is well worth a listen or read. Actually, Catherine picked it up as well recently. So The Georgians is the topic of the next online history festival. And where have I written it down? That will be taking place on the 24th till the 26th of March. If you can't make those dates, don't worry, because they're all recorded and you get access to them till the end of May. So the tickets for that will be going on sale by next Friday. We may not have the full lineup of speakers. There will be an early bird price. So if you get in there early, you get a cheaper price, ticket price, and those will be on when they've run out. They've run out, so get in there. But it's looking like we've definitely got Gareth speaking. We have Antonia Keeney talking about the parties and the incredible stories of things that happened at Blenheim during the Georgian period. Illyria Lynn will be talking about the fashions. Cat Marchant again will be talking about the use of in the Georgian period, this is where you get the start of the press questioning the monarchy. And you had people like Cruikshank, who the cartoons, if you've ever seen the cartoons, that were the satirical cartoons that were pointing out in very certain terms the downfalls, the pitfalls, the short what am I looking for? The failings, the shortfalls of the monarchs. Um, and if you've seen one of them, it's likely to have been Crookshank. So Kat's going to be talking about that, and I have another couple of people up my sleeve, which I'm hoping to confirm really soon. So that is going to be the next online history festival on the Georgians near the end of May. Sorry, excuse me, near the end of March and available till the end of May. And we will have 2 live events as well during it, a panel discussion and a uh, and a quiz, because we like to close with a fun quiz. Yeah, Marie, shortcomings, yeah, could apply too. Yeah, absolutely. So everybody, I have bombarded you. Let me leave you with a Marcus Aurelius quote. Now, I've just bought this book. Did any of you heard of this before? So Marcus Aurelius is a Roman emperor. He was around in the 2nd century, and he struggled. He struggled to understand life. I mean, in the same way as I think any sort of person who mulls. I certainly mull on things, and he writes. It's now obviously published. The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. It was not meant to be published. These are his private thoughts. Now I'm going to leave you with one, because I haven't read them all yet. I'm sure there's going to be a lot that I will want to share with you, but let me leave you with this one today. Yeah, Rebecca, I'd heard of him and not the book, so I was very excited to hear that you get a book, and Penguin publish it, so it's quite easy to get hold of. There he is. Let me leave you with this. Whenever you want to cheer yourself, think of the qualities of your fellows, the energy of one, for example, the decency of another, the generosity of a third, some other merit in a fourth. There is nothing so cheering as the stamp of the virtues manifest in the character of colleagues, and the greater the collective instance, the better. So keep them ready to hand. And I wanted to read that out because I think collectively we can do a lot for each other and our sanity, happiness, and general enjoyment of life. So thank you. On that note, thank you for joining me today. I will see you all next week. History After Dark is Wednesday evening. History Tea Time Chat is next Thursday at 1:00. That's the last week that it's going to be on a Thursday. It is the final one of 2022 as well. So I hope you have a fabulous day and join me next week. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.